about ready yet. Take a note if you need it.
Basically ready. So first thing on the list is Public Relations Communications Update. We'll be brief on that because it's an update. I think we talked in the last board meeting a great deal about this. We have a survey underway. We extended it. We'd had fairly good response. We're wanting more response than we received. So we kept that open till the end of this week. We have a draft framework. The communications work group of the board has seen both. The draft survey was very influential in helping us revise the survey, which is now out. The framework, communications plan framework, the work group also had seen, and that's on hold till we get the survey results back as to how we want to refine that plan. And then we've had something called the communications protocol, better named Who to Call When, that Chris Yerkes, Jason Platzner, and Fee Goodman have been working over to refine it, and they hope this week to have that developed. They're taking what had been a Roslyn, New York district model, which is good. It's kind of a listing, and they're trying to make it actually a little more current as to how it might appear on the website. So it's taking a little bit longer. Once they have that draft ready, we'll share that back with the work group, but also begin sharing it with certainly administrators and others again. And if there's any implications for teachers on it, such as kind of who do you call when, we want to give them a heads up. So that's all in progress. So that's where we are along the way. The website continues to get cleaned up, tightened up. I think you'll notice photos are shifting and changing. Not a technical term, but dead wood that's been in there is starting to disappear. And then, I'll give a little update in a second on actually recognition that that team received. So that's the, we had thought we might have more to tell you at this point, but there's a lot of work underway, which I think is good, but the actual outcomes of that work aren't entirely clear yet since we're in process with that. So that's the public relations communication update. I'm not sure if there are questions or not on that at this point. Okay.
Are there other highlights? Let's see.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have other stuff?
Yep.
you wanna go
So I want to shift to
Yep.
district. So the next thing would be district highlights, and this is a chance in our meetings for me to give some good news, some updates on successes. First off is Hastings High School student Jasper Zimmerman has won the 2021 National Association for Music Education Student Composers Competition in the K-8 category for his piece Going Places. So that's quite an achievement. Second, Hillside Elementary School Day celebrated Unity Day last week, where they're learning about the prevention of bullying and trying to make sure the environment is safe and healthy. And that's also focusing on their fourth grade safety patrol, who when about once a week I'm up there saying hello to people, and the safety patrol is quite visible. They're very proud of their work.
Gig, yeah.
So that's all good. Third, and it was something I hinted a few minutes ago, I did forward to the board earlier today that we received for the 2021 budget newsletter a fairly significant award from the state, an award of honor in what's called the National School Public Relations Association contest, and that goes jointly to Jason Platzner and Chris Yerkes on behalf of the district, and it was for their budget pamphlet. So I'll get a little more of that sent around to you as a board so you can see what they're actually honored for. Fourth, while we all are dealing with masks and COVID, we're also trying to get back to normal. So this Friday, there'll be a Halloween parade at Hillside.
Yay.
And it is limited to family members and some certain central office staff members. But it'll be outside, masks still worn, but full costumes and all the rest. And we're glad that that's getting reinstituted. Most of the elementary schools around are doing that, so I'm glad that we were able to do that. And another update, while not technically within the district, we have some 8th and 9th grade baseball players who had a lot of success this weekend, and nearly all of them are Hudson in Hudson. So let me get this right. The Greater Hudson Valley Baseball League Championship was held in Danbury, Connecticut. They won that.
Oh, wow.
And it's a team made up of our 8th and 9th graders who will be substantially already playing for us in the district in modified level, and most likely going forward will play for us. So I'm stretching it a little bit, but I think it's definitely recognition that we should honor. And there's a certain board member, this is pure coincidence, but a certain board member has a pitcher on that team. So congratulations.
Thank you.
And,
Congrats.
so that's,
big news.
I think, worth mentioning. The other thing I might do here, I think it fits within district highlights, but it's a little more kind of, not the highlights, but some updates on the update to the community that went out Friday there. For the first time in a while, I talked about COVID items, and there's even been development since then. So test to stay, I had raised as something that's getting worked on by the county. I learned this morning that the county executives, I don't know if it's statewide, but quite substantially across the state, are advocating that with the New York State Department of Health. And that's, as George Latimer, who's been really out front on this, has said they're now hoping that this will happen soon, but it is a little dependent on you may know, the governor needs to name a new commissioner for the Department of Health, and they're hoping it doesn't get delayed for that. But they're convinced, the county executives, and certainly Mr. Latimer, that this is something that should be in New York State. It's in multiple states, but if you really want to understand it, go look at the Massachusetts information. I was going to put that link Friday, but it would lead people to everywhere, so I just did the one newspaper link. The other thing going on is that the Department of Health County is getting organized to facilitate the delivery, the provision of vaccinations for ages 5 through 11. We're all anticipating that'll be coming along soon. So we've been looking at how much Hastings itself has been a site for providing vaccinations, or done that in collaboration, coordination with Dobbs Ferry, or in other ways. But we're working to be ready for that. And we may poll our Hastings families to get a sense of, their likelihood, anonymously, their likelihood to take that advantage of that vaccination, because that helps us plan with the county. And lastly, we've not had these questions here, but as the rates do come down a bit, and there are things that already are sort of repeating themselves in the pandemic, but there's been some in other communities that press to stop wearing masks. We've not seen that here. And the superintendents as a body are asking the county and the state to be very, very clear right now. That, as one superintendent put it, when we can stop quarantining, then we'll have a conversation about taking masks off. But right now, we've been really, really good about keeping kids in school and students in school. Masks are a part of that. Certainly in Hastings, I'm not seeing any evidence of any kind of substantial discomfort or resistance with masks, and just let us in schools stay with our success. So that is something that the superintendents coming out of this county are advocating, just to be clear that until we really are out of the woods substantially with COVID, don't let us get in a debate about mask wearing. Elsewhere in your public life, you can do that, but put it very simply, we do our work in groups, and we do our work in tight quarters, and we do our work with people coming in from all over. So right now, let's, keep the masks on. But we're asking the county and state to help us with that. So those are all my updates at this point, district highlights. Let's see if they may prompt questions or not. And I don't know if for this I left anything out. Melissa, we'll pick up other items later, I think.
Can we ask a question about?
Please.
That right?
Yeah.
So just, I think we had admirably low numbers of people even going into quarantine. And so test to stay, assuming that the people that were quarantined were not positive on a subsequent test to stay would let them return? Is that how it works exactly?
Yeah, it basically is put very simply, and you'd have to shift the test. That's the other part. You'd be using a rapid as opposed to the PCR, plain English. That you could be coming to school as long as you're testing negative in what would have been the equivalent quarantine period.
Okay, so you're testing instead of quarantining?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So you can, and we put numbers out this Friday, if you looked at them closely, you know, the ratio of those quarantined relative to any positive case is so much lower than it was, because we're drawing those lines very, very tightly, but it's still picking up. I mean, there's some now 26, 27 students who have had to be out for quarantine. Under test to stay, they wouldn't have to be.
Right, right.
Now, we may get the vaccinations first. And so if those students were fully vaccinated, meaning 2 doses, that's what, as you know, fully vaccinated doesn't mean 2 plus the booster, it means the 2, or Johnson & Johnson, the 1. But right now, we're looking at obviously Pfizer for our youngest students, so that'd be 2. They wouldn't be quarantining. And that's how important the vaccination is. That's your get out of quarantine card for free. But that's more of an answer than you probably wanted. But
No, it's interesting. I mean, you know, I'm trying to see how the pieces fit together. And I know that you said that they're waiting on the New York State to appoint a new director of health. Is the sense in the county that that's really the only step that has to happen? Then a policy, a test to stay policy would come down from the state?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
great.
And now, you probably read between the lines, the states then with it got to say, we're willing to accept the rapid and not the PCR, because currently they're saying PCR.
We should wait for it.
And that was something I did put in the note Friday. Medical advisors, directors actually appreciated the unnamed thank you. And others have joined them in saying to the county and the state, let's move back to the rapid. And it's largely a supply issue. So,
That's great, thank you.
all right.
I have a question, Bill, about
Sure.
masking. I think it would be helpful to understand what, and I know you don't have the answer now, but when you talk to your superintendents, what the metrics need to be unmasked. You know, because right now it's like, well, we don't know, you know, the county rate has to be 1% and, you know, whatever. I think that would be helpful to know. Otherwise, it feels like we're never going to be unmasked.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think right now that it's following the guide, it won't be the super setting it. I mean, that's what we're trying to avoid. I mean, just don't put the public health and medical decisions on
Makes sense.
us.
Right.
Have that above and just get clarity from above.
Yeah.
It does, the CDC did recently come out and say schools should stay masked just because of the, politely, the group, we do our work in groups and in tighter quarters. But they may be just able to start a metric to it. I think a big issue will be, see what proportion we get vaccinated, what the rates are doing then, and that may give some flexibility, but we'll see.
Got it.
So, one thing I did want to mention that did go out to you, which I think is a big step forward for Hastings, and thank you, Maureen, for this relationship. This was in the materials. Have not heard back from parents yet about it, but I think this is a totally different topic, but it's safety and security and putting in one place with, I think, some clarity, what we do in the case of emergencies. So this, and thank you, Maureen, for being the engineer behind the scenes on this, so.
Did Alteris work on that with you, or?
Yeah.
They did. Great. Thank you.
Is that something that could maybe go in students' folders? I know sometimes parents don't check emails, but they do check the folders every day.
Yeah, I think we could talk about doing that, with the, like, younger grades.
Yeah, you know, like when you get the folder. I know sometimes I used to miss things in emails, but sometimes it would be helpful if it was in a
That's true, no,
folder.
I agree with that, you get so many, right? So I think that would be an idea.
Okay, thank
So
you.
that was, okay.
It's good because sometimes when things happen, people don't realize all the things that we do, so I think it's helpful for, and they can also speak to their children if they have
Yeah.
any questions about it.
It's nice district PR, because you did a lot of work on that.
Okay, administrative reports. Melissa Szymanski, I'll pass it over to you for the curriculum instruction.
Yes, so the first update is around our registration process protocol. So the leadership team goals document that was recently shared during the Board of Education working session includes an action item that's related to enhancing our registration process and ensuring that data and information is precise. And so in partnership with the leadership team, Janice, Mateo Toledo, and Michelle Porter, we finalized a protocol document that outlines the flow of information during the registration process, as well as explicitly defining associated roles, associated responsibilities. And we're also now looking into whether or not an online registration option for parents might be feasible. And we're awaiting pricing information before determining next steps, but when we're looking at, just from a place of process and minimizing, maximizing effectiveness and minimizing the potential human error just based on reading handwriting, right? So that could be something that could be really beneficial for all people and very efficient for new families coming. So we're looking for pricing information for that. Another item that was on the leadership team goals document that was recently shared includes a program review for inclusive practices at Hillside. So Laura, Tesfa, and I worked together to create the RFP document, which was also reviewed by Amy over at Hillside. And I believe we hit send on that RFP. We're about to hit send on that RFP.
I don't think I have that.
Okay, all right, so they'll share it to the business office so that we push it. And the proposals will be due back in, at the end of November to allow some time for responses. And then they'll be reviewed by administrators and teachers to determine who will be doing that program review. Professional Learning Committee met to begin discussions around one of the things that we're doing on our agenda this year, which is the curriculum review cycle. And so that was also outlined in the document referenced in the work session. And we began exploring the purpose of a curriculum review cycle, investigating some examples of cycles that exist in other districts, and starting to think together about what might make sense for us and why. The technology planning. So Maureen and I have been working closely with the Lower Hudson Regional Information Center to develop a process and timeline for the state-required tech plan development. And this will be presented to the Board of Education on November 8th, so that is on the agenda as a presentation. And at that point, we'll be presenting our outline for the process and who's involved in the process and what that will all look like. And then we do have internal committee membership already formed. We've secured dates, and then the actual work will begin in November. Our first date is November 12th, followed by the 15th, and then there's some ongoing dates which we'll be sharing with you on November 8th. There's representation on the committee across buildings and across roles, so we're looking forward to having that cross-section input. And then an update on the academic and SEL screeners. So the academic screener administration has now been completed. And again, that was being used, Star Renaissance K through 8, reading and mathematics. We've encountered some technical challenges with this screener and also with the Panorama SEL screener that we're working through. With Star, the academic screener, the difficulty lies in syncing the parent reports. There's a parent report that's generated, and we've been working to try to sync that with eSchool so it's directly available to parents within the portal. And that's been a point of challenge just from a technical perspective, from the technology piece. And then with Panorama, the SEL screener, we've encountered some challenges with rostering students because it's really important that we're able to disaggregate students by special education status, English language learner status, and economically insecure status. So Michelle Porter, who's our data coordinator, and our Lyric technology team have been working together to resolve both of these issues, and we've been really meeting either in person, on the phone, back and forths with emails, meeting with the company, and we're in a good space now. As of this afternoon, we've made a decision for the parent reports that we're going to print and mail them because we don't want too much grass to grow. So that will be happening. That mailing is going to happen at the end of this week. We expect parents to have the reports in hand early next week, and many districts don't share the reports. We've decided that we will be sharing the reports. We think it's important. I will be getting a communication out to the community just to make them aware of these things that I'm sharing with all of you. And with the SEL screener, I think we've worked through those rostering glitches at this point. And as of this afternoon. So our hope is to be able to administer the SEL screener next week, which is 1 week later than we originally intended. and to have, again, the star parent reports to be mailed out at the end of this week. So we're working through both of those things. I want to echo the congratulations, especially extending the congrats to Jasper Zimmerman, to our entire music department, and all of the fine work that went on behind the scenes and the passion to cultivate that. I know there were lots of entries from across the entire country, and this was a really prestigious award for him. And the National Association for Music Education, that student composers competition, that particular one, was also sponsored by the European American Musical Alliance. And so it was a big deal, and super, super proud of Jasper. So.
If I might just underscore a piece of this, at the whole screeners discussion, and last week we had was it last week or this week? I'm losing track of my weeks, my goodness. But last week had our monthly with the PTSA and SEPTA leadership, and they're really valuable partners. And they said clearly that it's really important for Hastings to be moving into having screeners.
Yeah.
It's a diagnostic. It's one of multiple measures, multiple indicators. All of us have young people in our families and around young people. No one number explains a person. Multiple pieces do. So I think if Hastings is now ready to embrace screeners and other ways to understand student growth and progress, no one point in time, this is really, really important. The first go-round of the screeners is, as Melissa said, we had some technical bumps. But the view was, let's, administer the screener, begin working with our teachers parallel to that, so we weren't waiting on the teacher training and support to get the first screener. So it's been a little rough, but I think it was the best intention to get moving with the screener. The next two waves of the STAR screener, which will be, because there are 3 in the year, we'll understand better ahead of those two what the actual dates for the screener is, and then what the date of reports coming to families are. But it's really important for families, and I say this both as a superintendent and a parent who's received these, to look at it in context of all kinds of information. And it's not high stakes, it's not a single indicator, but it's a way to help us really understand progress. And I think over time, it'll be valuable that way. Also, I'm a little surprised by the number of districts that don't automatically share the information, because the minute a family asks, per federal law, you need to give the information. And so I'm glad that that's what we're doing. I actually insisted on it, and Melissa joined me in that. But I think that's the way we need to be. And I would just hope as we go further with the screeners, we'll smooth out our part of it, and we're committed to working with families to really help them understand what does this new kind of information mean. But I just really wanted to underscore that part of this, because as I've been listening, we're in a bit of a new moment in Hastings, I think, and I think it's a very good moment. So.
And we've gotten my extremely unofficial data sharing right now, which is that people have come to me and shared internally with teachers that the data is extremely helpful. So those who have come to me and have said, this is really great, we're so glad we have this. So it's been really positive. And from the, just from the screener administration standpoint, things have been very smooth in the sense that, this screener was given. Kudos to the building administrators who were very supportive. There were sessions done in advance, making sure the training was happening. Then we partnered with our Lyric partner, basically our Lower Hudson Regional Information Center partner, to do data dives. So the first one I actually did with Jennifer Sprelli and Amy Kazis together. We entered that space to be able to play around. That helped us to be able to customize additional data training that would go to the MTSS teams and the teachers. So that happened. And then the next part is that parent release part. And that's the part that's been a bit bumpier because like actual tech, like it's the rostering, it's the syncing with portals, and similarly with Panorama, it's the actual, the nitty-gritty of manipulating the back-end systems to be able to move that forward smoothly. So to Bill's point, this is our first rodeo with both of these. We've used Panorama before. That's not an unfamiliar resource to us. But what we haven't done is make it student-specific, so we could really identify needs. So previously, it was just about pushing a link. But here, we really want to be able to look at the data and see patterns, which is why there's a new layer, a new element of complexity to work through. So,
Systems
moving along.
integration, yeah.
That's super helpful. Thank you both for all these items, and that one in particular, but all these items that you're advancing. I think there's just some big, important kind of managerial topics that we're driving forward with curriculum. So in addition to all the specifics, kind of the leadership side is much appreciated. So thank you. Maureen Caraballo for the business report.
So I'm just wanted to update the board and the public on the current, where we are in our solar project. So the district is currently in the final stages, hopefully, of a potential solar project that we've been really working on for the last few years. Prior to that, we've actually been trying to get a solar project in the district for about 8 years or so. What makes it challenging, a lot of people may look at our roof space and think, why hasn't the district engaged in this prior to now? But the financing with solar, it really works well for homeowners because you're paying Con Ed rates and there's a lot of opportunity for savings. Solar panels, although they're less expensive than they previously were, there's still a price to installing them on the roof. So part of what we investigated was we had gone through different programs with federal incentives in the past and tried to purchase our own, and unfortunately the financing for us was not working, meaning we were willing to have a break even, but we really didn't want to pay more for solar energy than we were paying for our current electric that we buy through a government oversight that adjusts our rates down. So we were notified by the village of a group, Sustainable Westchester, that was working in the area, and they thought that that may be something we could partner with. So the different approach there is that instead of the district owning the panels, we're really just leasing and renting space for solar. And again, it really, our goal is to, of course, provide solar energy for the community, which then could be repurchased by homeowners to lower their bills. So this is kind of a win-win for the district. I think we're finally, I'm pretty optimistic because we've gone through multiple negotiations with the attorneys. The type of contract for us is had to be tweaked to be legally allowable because we're not allowed to enter into 25-year contract terms for the district. So we had to kind of provide or find different ways to enter into a contract. So all of that being said, last week we kind of got to the final stages where both parties are in agreement to the terms. Now it's a matter of having the full engineering to ensure that what they believe they can put onto our facilities will work for them. So we're finally at that piece. If everything were to kind of move forward in about a year's time, we would potentially see at both buildings solar. So,
Wow.
yeah. So, but that's like, I think we're definitely gonna have it at Hillside because I know that Hillside from our previous time doing an RFP, it works because the engineering was done there. And actually, I know, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I remember that there's a lot of more potential at Hillside, believe it or not, because of just the way the sun and how these panels work and things. It was a different layout there, but also why things here are a little bit more possible are two things. Solar panels are lighter. The previous panels, the weight, there were some issues on this roof structurally for us. That now, with some of the new panels that they're thinking they would put on a roof would not be an issue anymore. And then in addition, we have all new roofs at both buildings. So that also, because we didn't want to get into a situation where they put the solar on and then like 5 years later, we needed to remove it. So we're in the right time right now. So, we're really optimistic that this is gonna work for us. So, I just kind of went off the cuff there, but that was the update there. Again, last week I did report that we would be having crossing guards that is still coming this week, and part of it was that, I've mentioned before, the police department needs to train our folks, and last week they had a couple things going on, and as we all know, they only have a few officers on during the day. And actually, tomorrow we were going to begin, and Dave just said, Maureen, even though we could definitely begin tomorrow, being we're like training people and the weather tomorrow is not going to be great, can we just wait till Wednesday? And I think, if I want the crossing guards to continue to work for us, it probably is better to start on a sunny day than a rainy day. So I agree with his thoughts there. So, but again, we're really happy. We have a good amount. And actually, Dave talked to me the other day during a drill about potentially if the school would be willing to take on all the crossing guards in town. So, because it may be easier for the school district to hire people because we're doing it with some of our employees who already work for us, where when they have to hire, it's a lot trickier because they need people to come in the morning and then leave, come back in the afternoon. It's almost like a bus driver where I'm kind of using existing staff and having them either start earlier, and then we're able to kind of get them in the crosswalks when we need them, and they're still able to work for us during the day. So that is something we're looking at, because unfortunately, he actually had lost somebody last week, and that was also part of, he had to have officers down at those crosswalks. So I am very happy to say I believe we will be having people this week. That's, one of the pieces that we've been working on for many years. And I want to, again, thank the PTSA working group, who has really been very patient, and our partnership with the town, because there was a lot of investigation they did to ensure that this would work, because there's the traffic flow. They have to be careful by adding a crossing guard. It does impact traffic, and you need them to be well-trained, or else you cause other issues. So we're finally here, so thank you.
Thank you.
Maureen, I have a question.
Sure.
Did you say that it may be more expensive, or it may not, like the solar panels will not sort of reduce the bill towards electricity because whatever you're paying is to some
Correct.
adjusted amount?
So that's why what we're doing now is the solar panels will be on our property. We'll receive rental income they'll just basically renting our roof space is what the company will be doing. The solar energy that those panels produce will be returned to a grid that will be available for Hastings residents only.
Got it.
So that's, so it's a win-win, because,
It's a
we
win-win.
have really very limited revenue opportunities
There
too,
go the
so.
there go the
Yeah,
budget
that's good.
complaints, huh?
Huh?
There go the budget complaints. If the
Yeah,
school is
yeah, it's
powering
not-
the village.
Yeah, no. So, it'll be great, and then we'll receive some fixed income for it too, which is also a positive.
I know that was a lot of work, Maureen, thank you. It's
Yeah, my
so
goodness.
important and
Great.
amazing,
8
thank you so
years.
much.
Oh, no problem. Thank you, yeah, it was,
28 years, right?
it has been, I know,
Right.
we went through
Great
so
job.
many different
Right,
pieces, and even to a point where, we're really excited, and then we got to a point, and then like our roofs had to be redone, so this, I really think Mayor Armacost, and I'm trying to think of was it Trustee Lambert, I think, were involved with this, and they were, I think it was Trustee Lambert who brought this idea to us, so we're appreciative of their partnership as well.
great.
Excellent.
Okay, Gus, do you have a report?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm sorry Sabine isn't here. She wasn't feeling well, so it's just going to be you and me. And also sorry, neither of us were here last week. Sabine had a soccer game, the cross-country team had our big annual dinner, so neither of us
Good excuses.
So it's
Just
been a
soccer
busy
tonight.
couple weeks for high school students. Not last weekend, but the weekend before was homecoming. Varsity football sweep Woodlands for a win. It was like 30-something to 1, or 2, 30-something to 2. So solid win. Pep rally was a major success that Friday. Sports teams performed some funny dances and little skits. High school band played, and seniors Ella Campbell and Wyatt Blackie hosted. So that was really fun. Fall sports are starting to wrap up. Varsity boys soccer lost in sectionals, unfortunately, but varsity girls tennis won their league. Varsity field hockey is on their way to doing the same. High school clubs at homecoming enjoyed some pretty massive fundraising successes. some of the more popular booths brought in a couple $100, which is super impressive. On the note of clubs, there are a bunch of new ones that are doing really, really well, bringing a lot of new membership. So Astronomy Club, Garden Club, Venting Club, and Environmental Club are some of the new ones that are doing really, really well. Project Share's most recent Midnight Run, which was 2 weekends ago, was a huge success. We got several hundred sandwiches down to the city and tons of clothing and toiletries. So it was awesome, and the student board is working hard to set up the Thanksgiving dinner in a way that's remote and safe, but still can get as many high school students involved as possible. As for other news, seniors are hard at work getting their applications all ready for early admission, so that's something we're all hearing a lot about, and they're doing a great job with that, it seems. Planning for junior formal is in full swing. There's some committees that are working on that. There are also committees that are trying to put together a talent show. Dr. McCarthy, you heard a little bit about this at our meeting. For either later in the fall or early December to try and bring the school together. We're also working with the police department to plan some of those events. Yeah, so as the quarter's kind of wrapping up, there are a lot of bigger tests and assignments. So I think that all you guys that have kids are feel that there's a lot of work right now. But that'll sort of end with the quarter. That's kind of where people are at.
Thank you.
I think we always think about Hastings as like an arts community, but I think our sports are doing so well this year. It's
Yeah, it's been very
incredible.
impressive.
It's amazing.
It's all that pent-up energy.
I know, it's wonderful.
Now, back to the arts, though, there is a 7th and 8th grade
Play.
play this
That's right.
weekend.
Yes, indeed.
So the sports have their money, you gotta run for it.
That's the Legally Blonde, right?
Yes,
Legally
yes.
Blonde.
Didn't have to be blonde to be cast.
I like
Thank you, guys.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Public comment. I don't have anyone here, so we'll move right along. Business item 6A. Does anyone on the board have any questions? 1 through 9 business items. Do I have a motion to approve business items 1 through 9 under 6A?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. 6B, do I have a motion to approve the placements for CSE, CPSC?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Melissa, would it be easier if I said all in favor and all opposed, just in case, or is that's good? Okay. I know Sylvia had a much more formal process.
There you go,
Sometimes
exactly.
jealous of that. Okay, personnel, 7A, B, and C. Does anybody have any questions, comments around A, B, and C? Again, it's much thinner than last year, which is always good to see. Do I have a motion to approve personnel items under 7A, B, and C?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Approval of minutes. Any board members have questions or comments around board minutes from 10:12? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from 10:12?
So move.
A second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, committee reports, facilities report from 10:12. I don't know if,
I mean, I attached some minutes there. I don't know, Alex, if you wanted to.
No, I read through the minutes. They're highly accurate. It was more of just a backgrounding, of what the purview of the committee is. Not abstractly, but kind of what's coming up a little bit. I was mostly listening, so I would just say that the minutes are accurate and the information is represented there. There was no real headline or takeaway from that. But there was I guess the one thing is the Farragut Complex review is something you'd like to have happen this year.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know anything about it, but it certainly sounded like the correct next step to make.
Yeah, so that was the big takeaway. It was just really, we have the 5-year plan, which is always obviously being updated and put out further. And much of the items on there are just building related, the sidewalks, things that are visible. But then in addition to it, we have, we also need to incorporate in things that are either programmatic needs that may be coming down the line, or just enrollment, or shifts in what we do here that may require facilities projects to be addressed. So my recommendation, after we've been doing our own crack at it, or trying to ensure that we're thinking about what is coming down. Like, as an example, this room here, there's a point in which, like, there's been some discussion about if we needed more classroom space. Well, we could take this space and, kind of convert it, but a lot of what we do is, like, we react to, like, a need, and then we start modifying spaces. So one thing that would be a really good exercise is to, similar to what we did at Hillside, the architects work with the departments and the individual school leaders to really understand what they're currently doing, where the needs are, where they anticipate the needs may be, and then just help to kind of create a roadmap to ensure that, A, we have enough physical space here, and then the space that we do have, how we should be thinking about planning for modifying that space, improving that space, or adding to the space. So my recommendation, and the reason I do believe it needs to occur this year, is because I'm already seeing, similar to what was happening at Hillside, we're having some issues around space and space utilization. So it may not require us to do any capital project, but really to analyze how we're using space and how to maybe better use space, or possibly that we do need to add more space. So that's, it is an important review to have done, so that way you don't end up in a situation where then you have an issue. So that's the idea behind it. But that was the major, and then the other piece I just want to highlight here, I know it's in the minutes, but parking at both buildings is still, and this has been on our 5-year plan for a number of years. It's to consider adding parking to both facilities. Currently, and it's twofold, because yes, like, teachers, I guess theoretically can park on the streets, say at Hillside or down at the pool, but it does also create another issue around that surrounding neighborhood where there's really nowhere to walk, and it creates, like, people parking. It does create some safety issues that we've identified in our safety committee. But in addition to that, it also, teachers are carrying things. It would be good to have more parking at Hillside in particular. Right now, I think they're short probably about 50 spaces for the amount of staff that they have, which necessitates, and if teachers are trying to carry things to, in and out of their classroom, if they're parking at the pool, that's fine in the nice weather, but in the not so nice weather, it could be problematic. So it is something, and for those who may not know this, we did have a couple, not fully developed plans, but a couple engineered plans done years ago on Hillside. I know where there is a possibility of adding parking. It would not meet the current probably need, but there are ways to add parking that I do think we need, again, to discuss again. And quite frankly, the amount of employees at Hillside has grown substantially over the years, and it just has exacerbated that need. In addition, if a parent needs to come in there, there's, like, really nowhere to be. There's just a lot of issues. I think anyone who's gone up there knows that. And then we're also down here, in some ways there is not enough parking either, but this surrounding neighborhood is easier to park in if you have to. That being said, I'm not sure if they're going to put the bike lane on Farragut, but if it eliminated any of the parking, we do need to consider adding more. I mean, we need to add more parking anyway. I don't want to make it about the bike lane, but it may further exacerbate that issue for us. Again, we've had in the past, we know where the two areas would be at Burke Estate that would be possibly used to add parking. So I do think that that's another one that we need to kind of explore again and, you know, consider when we should be thinking about possibly doing that, if we should do it, so.
Can I say a comment? Just,
Yeah.
and you know, just talking about the parking down here, you know, my understanding is there are going to be spaces eliminated on Farragut under any plan, and just dropping my own kids off, you know, Rosedale is really turning into a parking lot these days, and you know, I think that's an issue that's gonna, you know, it's already hard to even drive down the street and the kids walking between the cars, so, you know, it's not just, I mean, I don't think it's just conceptual, it's kind of a proximate issue.
No,
Like,
and it really
Yeah.
impacts, that's why I was saying about the safety, when we looked, it actually hurts the ability of kids not to walk in the street because they're parked on both sides, and that's all of our staff on Rosedale, I mean, 100%. like,
Yeah, I see,
of
they're all
that.
gone, right, all the
Yeah.
cars disappear after 4, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's a lot of people, you know.
And we are also looking, we have an issue with both our athletic buses and some of the buses that drop here, there's no bus zone. And we just have buses that sit in fire lanes all day, and we've had like calls from the fire, I get calls from residents constantly, but, and quite frankly, there's nowhere to bring them, so we've talked about eliminating parking on School Street. Not all of it, but like some of it to create, so I mean, again, we'd be removing further, you know, so it is, and again, if with additional staff, you know, things change, and, you know, maybe what worked years ago is not working as well now, so I do think, I think it would help for the neighborhood, the surrounding neighborhood, it would help for children walking to school. I think there's a lot of times too, even when people are parking, if you pull into a parking lot and you're parking, it's a lot safer than, you know, I see some of our staff navigating a Farragut, you know, trying to back into spots, I mean, kids walking, I mean, it is a little bit, you know, and that's what happens at Hillside too.
Yeah.
With kids walking and people trying to park simultaneously on streets, it's, you know, creates other safety issues, so I do think it's important, at least we could bring forward some of the designs that have been shown to us before for consideration and discussion. And then if we think that's something we should be planning for, then we would either, we do have some capital reserve money we could use toward that, if we felt that was the greatest need we had, you know, so, I mean, but it has to be in the context of everything we need to do also. So, but I'm, like, every time I go to Hillside, because the last time I was there, I was getting every time all the staff here, when they see me, they're like, what are we doing the parking, you know? So, but it is something that it has to be on our list somewhere to be
Is
considered.
that something you will see bring forward as a proposal in the next few months? or-
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I would like to just show the plans, and when I say that, just for discussion, but I think, we know that thankfully with the last few bonds, a lot of our real big ticket infrastructure things, for the most part, have been handled, right? Like, although parking is extremely important, we also needed a boiler, so it always is like competing against something else also, I get that, you know, so I do think, though, that it definitely needs to be something, whether it be, we kind of say we're, you know, what is Hillside the place where should we, you know, focus on now, but develop the plans, see what the price tag is on the both of them, and then make a decision where they fit in that 5-year plan, and then, you know, consider possibly, if we felt we could pull it off, like, should we consider doing like the Hillside Park, you know, expansion next summer? Just, you know.
Okay.
So Maureen, are you saying that you have plans already, but we just never funded them, or you need to get new plans?
Well, I had schematic sketches, which are not really fully developed, you know, plans, so what would be, the idea would be, I mean, we could actually present some of those, and then just to kind of, so people can get a sense of what they would look like. We may want, if at Hillside, to get a much more fully developed, I mean, there were some that they were like, you can absolutely put a retaining wall here, you will cut in. This is an example, when you drive into Hillside, to the immediate left, where the softball field is, where the walk is, that would become a retaining wall that would build it up and push in and create spots there. I think it was like 22 spots they can
Wow.
fit there. And that's really a retaining wall fill, and and then you create the sidewalk on top of it, not below where it kind of goes down and dips. And actually, they actually said it creates a definition for the field. It actually probably it would actually look fairly nice too, but that's a fairly easy construction, but there was also something we looked at the other side, like to the right, if you cut back into that curb a bit, and you can kind of create another area. So that's one, but I think we can kind of show you where the two locations are, and then kind of discuss that, and then, you know, think about then if we wanted to move forward, we would get a much more like an engineer, not full engineer. They'd have to do a little bit more work to ensure that that would work, right? And then give us some pricing around it.
And same for Farragut.
Farragut, yeah, so Farragut, one of the options which was looked at years ago, where the current parking lot is, if, you know, when you go up those steps, that area there, which is, except for like one small, not field hockey,
Coursework.
no, yeah, there's something that, what is it, where you throw,
Shot
yes.
put.
You could move that down, we could move that to Reynolds Field on Lower Reynolds if we wanted to. We just put it there because we had space. That space there is really, for the most part, dead space. And years ago, they looked at, they would just kind of like double tier a parking lot there. So it would be part of the existing parking. And it would just provide almost like a mirror image of what exists there. So I can't even think off the top of my head how many spots there are, but just double that. So again, it's just a matter of, it wouldn't necessarily solve all of our issues, but again, you would be increasing. It is easier when people kind of go in their spots there. There's less like driving around. That also creates congestion when people are looking for spaces. So doing that, we also looked at the lower Burke on the opposite side of the driveway as a space. That one's a little further down, but again, there's also like for athletic events, that could create
Yeah.
parking there. So, yeah, those are the areas, and then like the Hillside one, there is a little bit more, so it would require a little bit, maybe possible, some trees coming down to the right. So the other one is like, doesn't touch trees, the one on the right may touch some trees. It also creates a bus lane. There was a bunch of different like things we looked at in the past, and it was at the time we were doing Hillside Edition, we looked at it, but then it just sort of, there were so many needs, and so we were really trying to keep the bond from, you know, growing, and we kind of felt like we can revisit this at a later time, so.
Yeah.
It's the later time now.
Right.
We're visiting.
That's certainly encouraging, because I personally look at the spaces and be like, oh, well, it can't fit anything,
Yeah.
but it sounds like you can.
can.
So that's great.
No, and I mean, this is the architects and engineers. They're-
Right, that's
of course they put it
perfect.
here, you know, and-
Amazing.
Yeah, Maureen, I think, it's something that we should look into because safety is one of those things that we need. So,
Mhm.
I think like, yeah, we should look into it instead of just not pursuing it.
Yeah, okay. And so we'll, at our next facilities meeting, I'll speak to your architects and engineers and see whether we can kind of work off of what they had done previously, and then either maybe even have them sketch out something new to present. They can kind of look at the area again.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's move over to the policy committee. A few things here.
So there's, I don't know how you want to handle it, committee. You've got under 9B, that's simply the minutes. Maybe you want to dispense with that and then move into the item 10, which is where there is a fair amount of excellent work by the committee in a
So
pretty
we had-
fast order.
Yeah, we had a very exhaustive, detailed meeting, and it was really good, helpful. We talked about a lot of different things, but I would just say that Dr. Makesi was very good at helping us facilitate the process in a way that we were able to sort of look at what each stakeholder is thinking about, including the community, and circling back with the teachers or the building leaders. And we had an exhaustive communication as to what areas we could improve and everything else. So I think it was a good, well thought out meetings. My colleagues were there, so they could add to that, but I think it was really well.
Yeah, I mean, across the code of conduct and the three policies we handled, it was really, there were not any dramatically substantive changes. There was updating of language. There were some new definitions in some ways. And then we basically took Suzanne Volpe's recommendations, and, you know, we read through them and agreed with them. everything makes sense. It was fairly, more of updating these policies than anything else. Are we doing a first read of them tonight?
Yeah, that's
That's
item
what this
10.
is.
So,
That's
okay,
what
okay,
it
okay.
is, yeah.
item 10.
But I do appreciate how you've pulled out comments and shown how the changes address those comments. It's certainly, I think, a great, I'm not sure who did that, but I think it's a great way to really clarify for the public issues that were raised and how those were addressed, especially in a long, and it's probably not appropriate for all, but that are like one paragraph long, but especially for a long policy like this, I think that's very helpful. It also makes it easy to go back and track the dialogue in public, a year later, which we all realize you can lose completely. So that's helpful. So sometimes it's possible, sometimes it isn't. It was possible here, so it was great to see that. I think very helpful. Yeah, so the way that this usually goes is these are the first read. We have read it here. You can go back and read it again. If there's further comments that anyone at the committee meeting wanted to share, we can share that here, discuss it, and then we'll actually vote on it at the next meeting. So I don't know if board members have specific comments, if you want to take another read through, and we can talk at the next meeting, but I'll throw it out to the full board.
So are we at the, I'm looking at the agenda, are we still at the summary part, or we are at the
I was
first
at the
read?
first read.
Okay,
Yeah.
So item 10A.
okay,
10A.
got it.
Yep.
So I know that this is part of the code of conduct is pretty huge, but there's an aspect about DASA there that I would love for the leaders to share some input, just so that the
Yeah,
community
so-
will have, So I'm not sure if we are there yet, or,
Well, yeah, what we talked about, Dr. Langs, we spent in the meeting, or the board spent in the meeting, a good amount of time looking at the code of conduct, how it relates to DASA. And then based on some listening, I'll get new verbs one of these days, that it was clear to me that I think we need to provide a DASA, what I may call DASA 101, for the full board. And then today, Melissa reminded me that, and there's no reason I would have known this, that last spring you did something like that.
For the
And it
policy
was
committee members.
for the policy committee solely, and it was well received. So my recommendation would be when, later in the meeting, when we do agenda planning and I have a suggestion that for the full board, and it may be pretty soon, do a DASA 101, comma, and then do it, because they're not necessarily connected, but then do an overarching summary of what we know about discipline patterns, thematically, not by name, obviously, of the individuals. But those aren't necessarily joined, but I think it was clear we needed to sort of do both for the board sooner than later. So
Great.
that, and because some of the code of conduct relates to it, some of it doesn't. But that way you could, as a board, grapple with the code of conduct, knowing that later you'll get an overview on DASA.
so I want to just, again, mention some of the things that, when we decide to do this DASA 101, which I'm sure the community would like to listen to, one of the things that, some of the questions that I think we should be looking into, which is more of an inquiry based, is how DASA investigations are triggered compared to how many actually are classified as material incidents. And if there is data collection on how students who are the victims feel about how the incident of bias was resolved. And then also what mechanisms have been instated for actually measuring the satisfactory handling of these incidents of bias. And so I think that should be part of some of the things
Yeah,
that,
that's helpful.
yeah. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thanks.
And probably maybe not just incidents of bias, but any incidents would be interesting
Correct,
to hear.
correct.
That would be.
Yeah, I chose bias because I have a copy of the, so over the years with the DASA, it's a public document, and people can, it's difficult to get it, but you can get it. But they were able to tally discrimination reports, right? From 2007, and then from 2013, they started breaking it to race, color, sex, nationality of origin, the different, so you're able to see what these incidents are. And Hastings is, and they have it by school districts and all of that. Hastings obviously is really great compared to other places as always, but there's still room for improvement. And so we want to be able to make sure we are practically serving the 25% students who are persons of color in our district, because there was clearly that, if you look at the percentage, there was clearly that it was quite obvious, so, especially in the middle school, so,
Got
yeah.
it.
And to be specific on that, I think if it works for Melissa, at your next meeting, which would be when you'd also be potentially voting on the second read of we could do so that'd be on the 8th, and I think the agenda allows for that, and I think we'd be ready, right, for that overview.
Absolutely, and, in terms of what you were just talking about, Dr. Lang, so that type, and the state reporting requirements have changed over the years. So what we've collected, what's been reported has shifted a little bit. But we do have, in that particular area, some data over the years. So that would be very easy to fold into the presentation for sure.
Yeah. So if the board agrees, we would have that at the next meeting.
Correct,
Okay.
that would be great.
In the role of facilitator, because again, it's a board committee, I think on the district code of conduct, just to flag, in the committee meeting was asked about, your administration had said from a dress code standpoint, and we did track very carefully what the comments were, and there were substantive changes made ahead of your meeting on the dress code. Your administration took out of the code of conduct hats, because they've come to not enforce that. There are larger, more significant issues which show up in the notes. If you saw, I put an explanation in the notes of the code of conduct that, you have an incredible student here, but often you pick which moments you want with a student based on behavior. And the sense was, not speaking here, but that, hats became way low on the list relative to other attire questions. And actually, I think it fits with the spirit of the question about where are we honoring creativity and flexibility here in Hastings. And so that's where the modification is. I don't know if that hat explanation is what you want, but I went back and did my homework for you as a committee with all three principals, all three assistant principals. And they said we would prefer to take that out because it's not something they're enforcing at this point for, I think, larger purposes. And,
It was like blasphemous when we were in high school.
That's
Remember?
right.
Well,
Exactly.
and some of us new to Hastings have noticed and thought, okay, but they were very clear.
It's
I had brought it up in the policy meeting because
They were very
it kind of
clear.
came out of nowhere, and I agreed. The thought of wearing a hat in the classroom to me, but the reasoning is makes sense, and I certainly trust the people on the ground, in
It
advance of my
was
own
more
opinion.
complicated before, because during the winter, climate changes are happening. Like, which hat constitute not the disrespectful hat? So it totally made sense when Alex brought it up, because in our day, that was a sign of respect. But like Dr. Marquesi said, if the teachers don't feel disrespected, okay.
I think it was, anyway, so I appreciate your flexibility on that, and more importantly, the principals and assistant principals appreciate your flexibility. The other item we did add, but subsequent from the meeting, was the modification of the parenthetical next to the word color. And so we had a modification for race and gender, and it was asked by the committee that we also look into a similar thing for color, and so you see that that's not legally required. Those, Attorney Volpe said she understood and gave us the language, and actually I think went to the same source you had gone to find that language, so that's all the way through. So on
She did a wonderful job. Like, I'm very grateful for the previous board selecting the counsel firm that we have, because they are really right on point. It was really it was descriptive of what it should be, so thank you for that homework.
So I think that what you have before is your board on the code of conduct, if you kind of pair that lengthy document, all the track changes, which are intentionally there so you can track the changes, that's why they're called that, right? Is then this document, we've covered all the items. And there's one item, though, that we said we're not ready for that yet here in
Right.
Hastings, but not ready to codify it. So, you'll decide over the next 2 weeks what you want to vote on next week. And I don't know, Alex, Doreen, Demercy, if you want to go into the other two, or just those are pretty obvious. Policy 1235 and policy 1420.
Policy 1235, I'm sorry.
Okay, no, good.
That was the taping, that was the updated policy. Very simple, the taping of conversations, is that correct?
Yes.
It was, the language was just updated for taping and tapes, verb and noun, to be recordings and, recordings. So, just to make it, more applicable to all the ways that can be done these days.
Doreen, you had mentioned something that was
Yes.
very useful during the meeting about, I think, the instructional
Yep.
materials. I think if you should
I
say
did?
it. Yeah.
Yeah, and we, no, I remember, we actually,
remember.
we addressed it. You want me to jump in?
Sure.
Yeah, if you go to that, track changes, we added in the committee, which is may include, not limited to, but we added in assistant
Oh, yeah.
superintendent for curriculum instruction and the relevant department chairs, parens. It had been solely, which is fine, at one level, school librarian, building principal, but the sense was, do you want to, it can include others, so that change was made.
It's all coming back to me now.
Yeah, yeah, and that was reviewed we reviewed that with Suzanne Volpe as well.
The one thing I think is important to mention, Dr. Mercursi, is that we had talked about the question from the town, just for everybody, I know they can read the changes, but that there were three different, there seemed to be three different codes of conduct, but you're gonna put everything together and talk to the
yeah.
admin. I think that's really good.
Yes, yes, exactly, so we were confusing people, right? And so that it's an easy fix right now for Farragut in the high school. And they'll be the district-wide code of conduct and then school policies. Hillside has the two-pager they call code of conduct. It seemed, as even the comment said from the public, that's clear and neat. So whether we change that this year, I haven't talked to Amy yet about it. Here I'm in a public meeting talking about it. I haven't talked to her about it yet. But I just broke a rule. But I think we may be fine there for
Great.
at least
I think
this
that's
year. But then,
Super helpful for
yeah,
people.
yeah.
I think it's just a mislabeling thing because, of
Yes.
course, with the kids, the kind of policy and expectation is going to be different. So the code of conduct and then the district code of conduct seem to be, which one are we following? So just school policy is totally fine. It's those kind of things that is all about semantics, not because the content has any problem with it. So I
Right.
think Amy may be very fine with it, yeah.
Okay, thank you for all the hard work on that. I know there was a lot on that meeting that you guys went through. So the board will read through and we'll vote on that next time and raise any additional questions if you have them. Dr. McCarthy, did you have anything more to say on this, or did you cover everything you needed on this?
Do you want to just, the schedule, I could do that now, or you want to wait till the end?
You can do that. I think we're getting close to the end. We've got
Okay.
second public comment, which looks to be thin, so.
All right,
Can-
so,
Can I
So-
just ask one question? I'm sorry, before we
Please.
get off the thing. So does the public get another chance to read through the code of conduct based on our changes and ask for questions, or no? The public had their chance, we made the changes based off of the public comments.
I mean, they can, yeah,
Yeah.
they're able to, and they can make other comments. And theoretically, we could say we want to hit pause and wait another time.
Right.
But by law, we have to give at least two.
Yes,
We can do more if we want.
got it. Okay, so we'll see if anything comes in
Yeah.
from this. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Might it be helpful to, sort of, I can do this, or I don't know, what ways that you guys have, but to try and get that code of conduct out to the student body, to, just get people to look at it.
Oh, we had
People
talked about that, having students
We
read through
did.
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
well,
It's
been-
it's on the it's in the minutes.
Yeah.
Student focus, so it's by all means, I mean,
Yeah, it's been,
yeah.
yeah, it's been posted as it legally has to be, but if you want to do more of that, you know.
You can send that link out to.
Yeah, I could also go into the social studies department and talk to them about, yeah, I know, some of the teachers, do that anyway.
Yeah.
It might get, if there's a little bit more student buy-in, it might make people follow a little
Yeah,
more.
that'd be great.
By all
Cool.
means,
Yeah.
I think you should do that, because this has to do with you guys, so
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, what you might want to do is pair it, you may want to talk to Mr. A and pair it with what is the school policies,
Right.
so that, because this is the district-wide
Yeah.
code of conduct, and I think it's very healthy, particularly for high schoolers, to look at that, and then look, though, at what it means closest to you, which is in the school policies.
Great, yeah, no, I'll get on that.
But, if you talk with him, he can guide you there, or, does that make sense?
Yes, I'm good.
That's great, thanks, guys. Okay, I wasn't sure,
Yeah, so on this plan, a few quick modifications. One will be, next meeting, we'll add in on the DASA 101. You also had listed in January 2 executive sessions, one on the 10th, one on the 24th of January, for the purpose of contract negotiations. Coming out of the Finance Committee, which I guess there isn't necessarily an update yet because it just happened, it's going to be important for the board to have an executive session for those same purposes, same topic, actually at the meeting of November 8th, correct, Maureen? As well as then, I'd suggest you also then for the meeting of November 22nd. Let's not take out yet the January ones, and because you may want those as well, but
Yeah, leave
you're
those
going to
as well.
want to, as the Finance Committee, and let them explain why more than me, but to add those in. So that would, again, just be clear, next meeting, the 8th, you'd have an executive session for the purpose of contract negotiations, and similarly, on the 22nd of November, have one for the purpose of contract negotiations.
and Maureen, what is your sense of how long we want to?
I think an hour
An hour, so
is
6:30 to
fine,
7:30?
yep. Mhm.
Yeah, so everyone, if you could mark your calendar, 6:30 to 7:30, November 8, November 22, executive sessions for the purpose of discussing contract negotiations.
Number 8?
Those are, it's
Monday.
right before both meetings, right? It's
Yes.
the hour before.
Yeah,
the
assuming
meeting.
Is it a Monday?
Oh, okay.
One is a Monday,
I think they're both Monday.
and 14 days apart.
They're both in Monday.
Yeah, both Mondays.
You're not able to make either of those?
I will be, like late. Would that be okay? Like,
It's probably worth, just because, you're a new board member, to, let's earmark those now, and let's think about it and just figure out what the best way to do this is.
Yeah, I can't do the 22nd. for
Hey, what was the
instance.
timing, the hour?
An hour.
So it'd be at
before-
6:30.
6:30, okay,
Would
thanks.
6:45 make any difference?
yeah, 6:45, so that if I get here 7, then it means I've only lost 50 minutes, which is like, okay. I don't want to lose half an hour of an executive session.
That could work.
Well, you
for
could split it too, I mean, if the meeting went, hopefully like it's going tonight, and we end at 9, you could do it like a half hour before and then pick it up for a half hour after.
Something like
Like if you wanted just to be, because I do think, Doug, with it's just good to like.
Yeah, my sense is half hour, 45 minutes is not gonna suffice.
No, I meant half hour before and
Right.
half hour after, like, so if it was 7 to 7:30, and then
Yeah,
if we're thinking we can kind of, depending on the agenda that evening.
So we
get
have
out
a
by
deadline
9.
to be done by 9, is that what you're
Correct,
saying,
yeah.
Maureen?
8:45.
Yeah, I was that day,
Yeah.
like, I second motion, so I'm totally kidding, but yeah, that could help.
Yeah, so the 22nd I definitely can't do before, but I could do after.
8th you can do before?
The 8th is fine.
Okay.
Do you want to say a 7 PM start on the 8th then?
Yeah.
Um,
And the rest after? Or?
Yeah, a split on the 8th could work, just looking at your agenda. You do have the tech plan, which that would be the only real substantive addition from this meeting. The 22nd, you've got 2 big reports before you in that meeting, so I,
More brief, because the work begins later that week. So the 8th is really the process timeline outline.
yeah, so that, you've got room in that meeting to be flexible, as Maureen suggested. Maybe a little bit in the beginning, a little in the end, if you want. The 22nd, which
Then-
You'll have to think that one through as you get closer.
Or maybe we could have it the following in December.
Yeah, you could jump into the
Yeah,
6th.
yeah, it can, how does everyone's calendar look on, the next meeting? What's that, the 6th, you said?
Yeah.
How do calendars look on the 6th? Because then we can just forego the 22nd if,
December
Thanksgiving
6th.
restored.
December 6th, yeah.
I don't have a conflict.
Maybe that's fine.
Okay. So why don't we just forego the 22nd, we'll pick it back up on the 6th, that way we're not doing some weird 15-minute juggle that won't be all that valuable to anyone.
Okay, so I'm putting it down for December 6th.
Well, yeah, let's put it on
6:30,
November 8th,
7:30.
December 6th. November 8th, we'll do 30 minutes before and needed time after. December 6th, we'll try for the hour before, 6:30, 7:30? Does that work for everyone?
December 6th, I should make that, I should make it work. We have more time, so I can make that happen.
Okay, great. All right. Okay, second public comment. Okay, and Board of Ed comments.
I will give an update, a very quick one, on the assignment you gave the three of us, the board gave the three of us to do, which is work on inquiry-based questions that can shape our goals. So the way each of us had all these different questions, but we are rewording them into inquiry-based so we don't become meddlers of the operational work of our well-abled leaders here. So basically, with those inquiry-based questions, we are sort of summarizing it into 3 words in order to get a more sense of a question 0. So again, a question 0 is not a question. I mean, most people know that, but it's more like a statement. So, and then from there, we would sort of write on, we have another part that we are going to call focus, because Jeremy was more about what is the work that we are going to specifically do. For example, like Maureen talked about the garage, sorry,
Yep.
the parking space, right?
Yep.
That it cannot be a goal, but it can be something, like it can be a focus, right? But the bigger picture is the safety part, right? So we are sort of delineating all these inquiry-based questions into these sections and then adding the rationale behind it. So my colleagues tackled away at the tackle project to work on this, and it was a very engaging time. So we hope to sort of get it all clean up, and hopefully we can formally report it to the rest of the board when it's all said and done. Yeah, so I just wanted
Is
to.
there a date we want to pick to kind of go through that? And we may have to do a different work session, right? I'm trying to think.
Correct, we have to do a work session.
It's probably not, yeah, we may have to try to carve out another day.
One more thing, we felt strongly, which I'll put it out there, we can think about it later on, that we should not include superintendent leadership as a board goal. And there are different reasons why we felt that, and we could talk about it during the work session or now, but we felt like probably, Jeremy, what was the word, board operations or something? I can't remember, we couldn't figure out the term yet.
We were going back and forth between defining board responsibilities as opposed to board goals. And a lot of our, some of that felt like, yes, it is a responsibility, of course, to be evaluating superintendents and, of course, overseeing curriculum, and whether it was actionable goals for the short term or whether we were doing guiding questions for the long term. So that we were trying to fit that, if it's board goals, it really didn't feel like it needed to be something worked on this year. Was one of the thinkings to going down from 5 to 4, I believe.
Yeah.
But there was still, whether it's actionable board goals for this year or general board goals for, a nice framework that could be used for every year, or whether we were just trying to make some real nice, inquiring questions, or just beautiful statements about what the board does and our responsibilities, so that our community better understands, where they're at when they come to administrators with a question, or whether they come to the board with a question. We have specific roles and goals and responsibilities.
Yeah.
I wish the last one rhymed.
Yeah. So basically, I mean, you remember the work session, Jeremy has his mind somewhere, so it's there. It is there, but we made sure that we had the bigger picture of every element in. So I'm calling Jeremy's mind part the focus, because that's where he is. He's right there, he's still right there. So that's what we have, and then we would do that. But so we have, it was 5 board goals, but then we were thinking that the superintendent leadership should be scratched out and replaced with something like maybe board operations or something it can be board goals, because the main thing is board goals. But another thing that, obviously we have to evaluate superintendents, but we felt like just superintendent leadership, if we are not careful, we may start meddling where we shouldn't, and only because we think we are doing our job, right? And so it's Jeremy always says 4 of us are new, so I just want us to save the headache of trying to put such a thing there. That would be too much of a gray area. So that is the only thing that I think we have to think about and see what we want to do with that.
Okay, so, do you guys want to send something around for us to look at?
Yes.
No comments, but.
Correct.
And then why don't we plan on, we'll send something, Melissa, maybe we'll send something out, like, to try to get a poll of when we can maybe find a date. Let's you and I will talk and figure out maybe 2 weeks from now, or before Thanksgiving at some point. Okay, that sounds great. Any further comments from the board?
Well, so just to sort of touch on the ideas that we discussed for board goals. So to make it a little more concrete. So something like the curriculum review cycle. One thing that was brought up is that the teachers are discussing what the purpose of it is. And one of the things that we've talked about as a board is that, or one of the things that we've acknowledged, is we don't quite have sort of what we've described as a North Star or guiding principle, or the sort of overarching conceptual idea of what we want education to be in the district. And one thing that came up often is this, are we reaching into operational space, and or what's the point of being in only an abstract space? And when, like with this curriculum review committee, or the setting up of it, I think it's important that the board delineates, we have a unique function. We have something that we do that nobody else does. We are very concerned about not doing what other people do, but we have something that we can do alone. And the idea of setting up sort of a conceptual target when it comes to curriculum, not operational details, but a conceptual target. And what I like to think of is sort of like gears, intermeshing, where the thing that we do isn't the thing that exists on the other side, but they can mate, they can sort of work together. And I think there's a lot of important conceptual things to discuss when it comes to curriculum, and not just sort of things that are of the day, but sort of forward-looking, and that are larger topics. And I don't know, I think that's the unique space that we have as a board to discuss those things. So whether it's through board goals or through the process that we're talking about now, I think it it behooves us to try and put something forward, some guiding principle that defines that space a little bit, because I don't think we have that right now. That's my wish, at least.
Yeah, okay. It'll be obviously easier for the board, once we see the document, to see how you're framing stuff, so that we can advance that.
I'm sorry, can I say one last thing? I just wanted to congratulate, really, I was at Wappingers Falls 2 weeks ago, and you guys, was it 2 weeks ago already? They had their cross-country meet, and, it was really sort of wonderful and eye-opening to watch the Hastings teammates cheer each other on from the different races, And to really, one of the most sort of touching things I saw, charming, touching, however you want to put it, was the amount of time you guys spent cheering on the kids you didn't even know. Where, the runners would come by at the end of, some people would finish 25 minutes and they'd stay there for 10 more minutes, the people would pulling up the rear, and they just, they'd have their school, they would go, yeah, go Bronxville, go. And it was really, it really spoke to the character of your team and what I think is sort of part of the institutional culture of Hastings, and it was wonderful to see, I have to tell you. So congratulations to you, your teammates, and, and it's not the only time I've seen it, and I like it every time I do, so.
No, it's definitely not something that's unique to the cross-country team. I think it's, and you see that across sports units. It's really special. Not just sports, all our different activities. And it's, especially in that, with surrounding districts, so small, so close knit, I think it sort of creates a really nice opportunity for that kind of support, especially when,
It's great, though.
With competition.
Yeah, when I was watching you guys, I was thinking to myself, I was trying to imagine, back in '86, when I wonder if that would have happened, and I wasn't so sure it would have, so it was nice to see, I have to tell you.
You are young. I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding.
It's okay.
I know you're older than me.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.